Welcome back again, and it's a great pleasure always to share with all of you some of the principles of safety assessment and standards, particularly of food and feed safety, in terms of what is happening at international level and what are our ways of doing national approach, and this within the framework of the regulatory framework that each country has. I think it is important to understand that there is as we go, there are three things which are important. That is, one is what is the legal framework, what are the guidelines and principles of scientific assessment and protocols and tests and SOPs for various GM crops, although most of them are dealt by case by case. The third important thing is how do you address the concerns of public. So these three phases of GM crops are all important. I will confine myself to the science of safety. Now today's topics are introduction to food safety, general food safety, principles of risk analysis, current established methods in relation to general principles of risk analysis and food toxicologists. Probably somebody who is a toxicologist would have covered up to here, but since I took up the challenge, I will try my level best to tell you what are the differences, novel approaches which are required in dealing with the food issues, national approach, introduction to regulatory framework of India, and novel approaches required for safety assessment foods in future. So what will happen in future? Now there are international institutions which have done a tremendous job, and for those who are not very familiar with these organizations, one of them is OECD. It promotes policies for highest sustainable economic development, and in fact it's OECD in 1986 was the first time to publish what is contained trial, what is a confined trial, and all open field trials, establishes guidelines of chemical testing, toxic chemicals, pesticides and biotechnology. FAO leads international efforts to ensure nutrition for all, provides. WHO is another organization. Then ILSI, which has been already introduced to you, and one of the things ILSI has that it develops lots of consensus documents in line with the above organizations, and then it puts forth its own documents and knowledge for use by various countries. And most important in the context of food safety is FAO WHO Codex Alimentarius Commission. It was founded in 1963 to basically formulate and harmonize food standards, all food standards, not just GM. And it has developed food standards, guidelines, and related text. In case of biotechnology-related products, the Codex has established a task force in 1999, an intergovernmental task force on foods and derived from biotechnology to evaluate health and nutritional implications of such foods. So Codex Alimentarius is represented by both developed and developing countries. A large number of scientists participate. Unlike the Cartagena Protocol, which is also dealing with biosafety and mostly related to biodiversity and sustainable use of it, where you get lots of people from other communities, like for example NGOs, activists, everybody participates in Cartagena debates. But whereas in Codex it is mostly a scientific exercise based on peer-reviewed publication. All these organizations which I showed, they depend on scientific discussions, peer-reviewed papers, scientific evidences to come at their documents. So independent scientific expert consultations were also engaged, and they came out with, if you see the whole range of work has resulted in 237 food standards for commodities, 41 codes on hygiene for technological practices. For those who are not aware, if you go to this website, you will find there is so much enormous amount of data available on pesticides, chemicals, and so many aspects. 25 guidelines for contaminants, 185 evaluations on pesticides, 1005 evaluation of food additives, 54 evaluations of veterinary drugs, 3,504 documents and limits pesticide residues. So much of work has been done by Codex, and it's an enormous task. Based on that, They have an access to global knowledge on various issues of toxicology. So far, they have done 5 expert consultations regarding food safety derived from genetically engineered organisms. The Codex had 19 sessions to determine standards regarding the matter. I mean, those documents which you see, 1981, 2001, the draft came out, 2003, final revised version. Basically, what these standards are, most of these standards are related to recommended methods of analysis and sampling. I think Dr. Vinay was telling that when I was in Argentina, I asked a question that we also have a compositional data in our National Institute of Nutrition. And what is the difference between ILSI database and then this database? Mainly, this whole game depends on validated protocols which are reproducible. Because what happens is, even if you are estimating iron, in one of our biofortification program, when we were to estimate iron content of a particular crop, we found that the Australians had some figure on the same sample, and our figure was much higher. Then the laboratories were seen, site visits were made. What we found was the people who are handling these samples were already, contaminated with iron particles, because they were handling the tubes and test tubes and the racks where a lot of iron was accumulating, and they were also handling the test tubes. So what I mean to say is, good laboratory practices as well as good analytical methods are important. So the recommended methods of analysis are available, percentage of total weight basic ingredients in the finished products, definitions, and then labeling requirements are also there, amounts of food additives. Now I'll give you one example how these things are available. For example, on the top, acidity regulator, so many agents, they have fixed up norms, final standards based on a particular commodity. If you see, there are 2 examples I have given. One is from the butylite hydroxyenol, where the chronic exposure results into gland, bladder, and gallbladder, endocrine, lungs, thorax, respiration, tumors, etc. Now, prolonged repeated exposure can cause allergens in sensitized individuals. But they have fixed a standard that this can be used only at 200 milligrams per gram after repeated consultations and all that. Same thing will in case of hexane, which is inflammable compound. It is 1 milligram per kg has been fixed as a standard to cause that one. Then you see, if you take even chocolate, for example, somebody in the morning was then mentioning about dose response. How much dose? See, about 100 kg per day has to be consumed for 2 years to produce these effects in humans, the similar effects. And 10 times more acceptable daily intake of carrots, 1 lb, is more achievable to consume in a day. Now, so therefore, anything that we consume could be a poison if it is not in a limited manner and a dose. All things are poison and nothing is without poison. Solely the dose determines that a thing is not a poison. Now, general principles of risk analysis are, the first one is that we identify the hazard. For a given material, is there any hazard known? Is there any history of the so? For example, formaldehyde causes cancer. Chlorotoxin causes severe diarrhea. The history is known. Second step is to characterize this particular hazard. So to what extent, to what qualitative it is, quantitative and qualitative assessment of nature of the hazard, the dose-response relationship. Sometimes usually animals are administered with doses, and to see there is no observable adverse effect. So NOAEL is the most important measure in most of the toxicology experiments. The margin of safety determination is also important. To account for interspecies and intraspecies variation, NOAEL is divided by 100, that is, it is factored, rounded off. Exposure assessment. Then this is the second step where you do determine the amount and distribution of the hazardous substances, routes and locations of the population that can come into contact. Because somebody was talking about acceptable daily intake versus daily intake at whatever way they want. So I think how much exposure, how many years they eat. For example, there was a debate on brinjal. The debate was that, brinjal after all is eaten once in a week. So where is the problem? So some people said that, brinjal is also eaten in pickles. It is in the form of processed food. So maybe there are poor people who eat brinjal every day. So all these discussions, how much exposure you are to a particular matter. In case of food safety studies, food dietary intake information is taken. Acceptable daily intake is determined usually with lifetime studies on rodents. Now when it comes to, when we shift our thinking from these food additives and others, what we find with respect to foods is, I think in the morning Dr. Vaine said, food is not like a simple drug, a hexane or a chemical. Food has complex thousands of macromolecules, micronutrients, anti-nutrients. They are ever changing. It has been mentioned in the morning. For processed food, you add again over and above additives and chemicals. So then you have a common food items, which are, for example, with a history of use which is not, which is not good. Therefore, it is safety cannot be proved absolutely. Lots of people say it should be absolutely safe. We should ensure that there should be no doubt that they should be safe. It can never be achieved. Even all the drugs that we consume, even a simple paracetamol, now we all know that it is not absolutely safe. It is all actual daily intake, acceptable daily intake, or recommended dose for a recommended time, a recommended disease. Safe assessment seeks a novel, reasonable certainty that harm will not occur as long as they are free from contaminants. Now, in all these chemicals and others, the tolerance levels are fixed. Pesticide residues, I told you some milligrams per ml or something, drugs, heavy metals, foodborne bacterial toxins, substances produced by cooking. In case of foods, the presumption of safety is basically, as Dr. Vaine has said, that is comparator. Usually, what is the history of the comparator? So it depends on that comparative assessment, which is otherwise they call substantial equivalent, which could take account into agronomic morphological characters, chemical composition, macro and macronutrients, key toxins and anti-nutrients. Now you just see in the chemical and drugs and others which I listed in the previous slide, mostly the tolerance levels are estimated based on animal experimentation over a period of time, whereas the whole approach changes when it comes to food safety. Food safety is, approach to food safety is completely different from, although there are many lessons which we learn from chemical compounds, but they are modified according to the needs. So are there any significant changes? Do they pose a hazard to human health? This is what in the morning we have come across. Now, to address these things, I don't have to go into details. There are so many documents have been produced which are consensus documents over a period of time. There are about 30 of them. Just I am giving a list in case anybody is interested. The slides are available with the organizers ultimately. So these are some lists, FAO, OECD, ILSI, and then I am superimposing some more. So a total of 37 documents are available comparing with all those 4 organizations who have addressed various issues related to the GM food safety. Now, in case of hazard identification and characterization of GE crops, the prime suspect is a parent crop. The comparator, with the comparator, are there any problems unintended with respect to GE crop? The transformation and inserted DNA, and we should know the entire details of this DNA. I'll come to you in detail. Gene product. Suppose the protein produced by a particular gene is toxic or is there allergenic or unintended changes in the composition, etc., which has all been discussed. Toxicity testing methods. Normally, they are adapted from the, what you call, they were developed over time for chemicals and then adapted to suit to the needs of food based on the principles that food is a complex mixture of several thousands of molecules. Structure and function relations, toxicity and allergenicity, and we'll come to you how toxicity is determined later. In vitro assays, enzymes, receptors, cell lines, and there is one test called digestibility here. In vivo animal studies. In order to monitor performance of the product and side effects, post-market surveillance is also incorporated in some cases. Now, up to this point, we have briefly examined food safety assessment, and food safety assessments have introduced general principles of risk assessment. Hazard identification, exposure, as I said, there are documents, consensus documents internationally available, and then there are ways of interpreting those response and then ways of interpreting the standards. In the next section, we will go into the test methods. For example, when you make a GM crop, you have a parent crop, you have transformation system, you have gene product, you have a GE crop. So then, at every stage, one should have to have information about, for example, there are OECD consensus documents on transformation and donor organism and many other aspects of this first box and second box. And then there are also biology documents produced by OECD, as well as India has biology documents. So one can refer to this biology document, and what can one get on parent? Origin in genotype, morphological and agronomic features of the comparator, other related traditional and wild varieties and other species, geographical distribution, history of safe use. So whether this particular plant is having a safe use history, then composition analysis. So between the parent crop and whether the composition analysis of this particular parent crop is available. So there are no new toxins. What are the anti-nutrients available? What are the allergenic compounds available? Most of these details can be obtained of the parent crop that is available from the database. Then you go to donor organism and transformation. Then in this case, it could be Bacillus thuringiensis, a crop, or it could be from other source. For example, we have somebody cloning a garlic lectin gene, leaf lectin gene into chickpea. We have cases of taking genes from mangrove for salt tolerance, from mangrove to the rice. So here you will see what is the history of this one. Taxonomy, what is the allergen? Are there any allergens? Composition information, same information you will get. History of safe use of this, function of rDNA used in transformation, and then these details are obtained. Similarly, the whole details about the molecular characterization of the organism. What is the DNA construct? Transformation and insertion. Vector DNA details, components, the vector map with the restriction site, nucleotide sequence of the vector, the method of gene delivery. All these informations are taken into account to identify whether there is a hazard or not. Now, then it comes to gene products. For example, the introduced gene must be producing some products which are going to affect. In this case of BT cotton, when many of these first generation crops, herbicide and insect resistant GM crops, mostly they produce proteins. And then whether this protein safety is concerned, previous exposure to novel protein, is there any information, structure and sequence of bio. So basically what happens is you have got a set of information which is already available. So most of this information is collected. So there are issues in Indian regulatory system. People ask, the protein toxicity has been well worked out abroad, pure protein which has been extracted from a particular gene product. And then is there a need for me to isolate the protein, purify the protein, and then do the studies again? After all, it is protein, you are the same protein, you can make it here also. So there is no need of such information, but mostly the document which is available has to be made available. In case of allergenicity, the proteins are usually compared with, there are beautiful articles by Rick Goodman. If you go and see his series of articles that he has written about the allergenicity, you have a databases and you basically do database analysis. Some people argue that you can have animal testing, but allergenicity animal testing is, unless you feel that the allergenicity is completely a new phenomena, this allergen detected is completely out of the scope of the database or known history. Then GE crop is subjected to nutritious and traditional counterparts. I think as Dr. Vinay was telling, in Codex you have also prescriptions for phenotype and agronomic characters, particularly in terms of pleiotropic effects, composition analysis, including the nutrients and anti-nutrients. So here comes the composition analysis, which have to be compared, and it is well explained by Dr. Vinay in the morning session. Now when you compare the food safety comparisons across, most of the information that is being sought is across countries, it is the same. Argentina, Australia, Canada, Philippines, Japan, South Africa, EU, USA. So the setting up of standards by these international organizations and adapting them to the local situation and dealing with the GM crops, each country has got its own guidelines, and the international best practices have been followed by most of these countries, including India. Now, I'll give you one example how the soybean has been treated, Roundup Ready soybeans. Soybean naturally contains certain levels of anti-nutrients, trypsin inhibitors, lectins, and isoflavones. So that information is important, whether during the composition analysis there is a huge deviation as explained by Dr. Vene in the morning. So such, unless it is beyond the range of deviation that is already there, it concerns for toxicity. Protein, oil, fiber, etc. has been compared with conventional counterparts. Trypsin inhibitor levels were 11 to 26% higher in GE beans in defatted and not consumed starting material. In defatted toasted soya meal, trypsin inhibitor values were not different than that of a comparator. Feeding studies in rats revealed, and chickens, catfish, dairy cattle confirmed no nutrition value differences. So this is how the whole issue so far, which I described, is referred in terms of Roundup Ready soybeans. Now, when the history of use is ambiguous and is completely new protein, and then there is no much information about all that which I spoke, then people resort to what you call acute or subchronic studies. Broiler, daily cattle, beef cattle, sheep, swine, or uncertainty regarding equivalents. Foods are complex, then can be administered at low multiples or average in human intake, and then based on the what you call acceptable daily intakes is a starting point. Then in some cases biomarkers are used, maybe in future crops. But what is animal toxicity studies or feeding studies so far have been revealing to us? 12 long-term studies of more than 90 days up to 2 years duration, 12 multi-generational studies from 2 to 5 generations have been documented, and they have been published by public funded organizations with respect to all those commercially available crops, particularly the 7 BT maize studies on chicken, cattle, goats, and sheep, and one BT cotton, BT rice on monkeys. 90-day studies on GM feed, for which long-term or multi-generation study is also available. All the parameters which I said have been particularly required for toxicology have been examined. Statistical finding methods have been considered. Results from all the 24 studies do not suggest any health hazards, and in general, there were no statistically significant differences within the parameters observed. Small differences were observed, though these fell within the normal variation range of the considered parameter, thus had no biological or toxicological significance. This is where the emphasis of what statistics, what are these limitations, how you have to interpret the data becomes very important. Now, for exposure assessment, we should have food supply information, household expenditure, some food consumption surveys, import statistics. Recombinant proteins in transgenic plants usually are in the range of 0.01 and 0.1%. Estimated daily intake for humans is 0.017 to 0.07 in general from the averages that are available. So then, no observable levels at acute toxicity test could be greater than 100 milligrams per kg per day. Even if people consumed 1400x that of the EDI, there would not be any safety concern. Let us examine some of these NOELs. See, for the known genes, no observable effects could be up to 4,000 times of the dose. See, and then digestion tests are done by pepsin digestibility and others. As in the morning, somebody was asking, most of these proteins are digested in 30 seconds, and there should not be any problem with respect to accumulations in the body, as somebody said. People say that BT protein will cause, it will go into the intestine and all that. So when it is digested in 30 seconds, how it will go? So these are some common sense questions, and there is no need for, after that data, to go again for, animal studies. So there is enough data. So, and then stable to processing. In most of these cases, it is not, none of them are stable to processing. Most of them proteins degrade after cooking. So therefore, this type of data is also important. GM seed, there is another issue with respect to exposure assessment. Some of them, they say that they get mixed up with the conventional seeds. Therefore, you should have a detection methods which are in India foolishly around 0.01%, and then in case of EU 0.9%. That is all mostly based on perception rather than real danger that is coming from. Food ingredient derived from commodity crops. Anyway, I'll shift to this one. Now in India, as you go from basic research to cultivation, these are the various, on the bottom, you find lots of tests and requirements. They are more or less similar to what I have so far described with international best practices. It may take 3 to 10 years from basic research to cultivation, and finally depends on the public acceptance. In the process, between basic research to the cultivation, you have so many acts, rules, regulations you have to follow. And most important for genetically engineered organisms in India is Environmental Protection Act 1986. And under the Act, you have Rules 1989, and Rules 1989 say 3 committees. One of them is Institutional Biosafety Committee. As I told in the morning, they have to be registered with the regulator, and there should be a regulatory nominee in these IBSCs. Then you have a state biotechnology committees. Most of them are not very functional because of their structure also, and then the district level committees according to rules do exist. And these are range of what you call guidelines incorporating all those international best practices. As you see, from 1990, we have a latest guidance in 2008, and we are preparing some more guidelines to update ourselves with international literature. Rules 89, 1989 cover entire spectrum of activities, research, development and use, manufacture, import and storage of genetically modified organisms, genetically engineered organisms, microorganisms, cells to any substance, products and foodstuffs of which such cells, new gene technologies in addition to cell hybridization, etc. So then, because of public perception and lot of concerns, so there have been also 3 major committees set up to address the whole regulatory framework as well as the food safety assessments, and then harmonize the safety assessment of foods with international systems. Now, in case of India, in case of USA, there is a system. In case of Argentina, there are systems to address food safety issues. But here in India, all GM is addressed through Rules 1989 with the Genetic Engineering Approval Committee, and then after cultivation, when it is processed, the end results will be seen by the Food Safety Standards Authority. All labeling, particularly all labeling is also seen by Food Safety Standards Authority, which has been with lot of struggle harmonized with all food safety. There were about 17 or 16 acts on food. They were all combined to make one particular authority. It's also picking up its own operations, and it also comes in the picture when it comes to food safety approvals and then labeling. But recognizing that there is a need for addressing complex range of products, number of applications in pharma, animal as well as plants, and the technology is becoming very complex, the government has gone with and then all the public perception and other things, the people, government really wanted to spend and instill an organization which is professionally credible, autonomous and independent, which is called Biotechnology Regulatory Authority of India. A bill has been introduced in Parliament in April 2003. It has been sent for comments by public. All comments have been received. And then as it is so just to share with you some small information, as it is so, out of the 150 comments received in 90 days, only 25 are for the bill and rest of them are against GMOs. They don't say much about the bill, but they are against GMO, and none of them to do with anything with pharma or animal sciences. Most of them are only for agriculture. Now, when this system will have an elaborate arrangement with different offices, it's almost like a mini FDA or OGTR Australia combined, and it will have a real, it is basically, somebody will say it is going to be a huge organization. It is not a very huge organization, but it is a lean, independent, autonomous, professional organization in which there is a transparency, predictability, and then it has got all sorts of arrangements for taking out the deficiencies in the present system. It will be mostly concerned with safety and efficacy and the science related to it. All the commercial use will go into in the commercial acts that are available, because this act will not give right to market. This act will only establish the safety. Now, once this act comes in the picture, you can see that in this column, approval for commercial release of GM foods processed, FSSA comes, Food Safety and Standards Authority. Otherwise, labeling also is with Food Safety and Standards Authority. So there are two organizations. One is Environmental Protection Act, Rules 1989, and Genetic Engineering Approval Committee, which approves everything, but processed food will be controlled by Food Safety and Standards Authority, and also labeling. Now, when the new authority comes, only labeling will be left to the Food Safety Authority. So it will be a single place to address in the entire process of import, processing, everything by this authority. And in doing so, in developing this authority, because after all, you can do any amount of scientific risk assessment, but if you don't have a supporting framework, legal framework, it is very difficult to establish these certifications. Then you have, while doing so, in this act, there was a effort made to harmonize with all other related agencies, including Drug Controller, Biodiversity Authority. I showed in the beginning a slide where so many acts were coming on the development of GM crops. Now, these acts are going to be in association with the new bill, so therefore there is a harmonization happening. So finally, the roadmap for scientific assessment of GM crops in India remains, if all the best practices that are there in the existing system will definitely go into the new system. You can see on the top, these are the guidelines available already. Most of them are in line with the international best practices. Where this cross line is coming, up to that the regulatory authority comes in the picture, establishing safety and efficacy. Beyond this, it will be the right to commercialize will be mostly depending on state governments and central governments. This Biotech Regulatory Authority of India is not going to give right to market. It is only going to give certificate of safety and efficacy. I think some people from the state government are there. Please tell this message to your people that no state powers will be eroded. They will be fully protected. State has full powers and right to object or not object, commercialize or not to commercialize on its own way. But the ultimate safety will be determined by this authority. So there are new guidelines, and now we are going to have some more new guidelines. So the whole guidelines are into food and feed assessment and environmental safety assessment. They are into before the field trial and after the field trial. Similarly, after the field trial, you have environmental, because food safety is not just in the lab, in the greenhouse. You have to collect a lot of samples for your animal feeding in case needed, for any other composition analysis. So food and environmental safety and the field trials go hand in gloves. So some of the people who have commented on the whole system initially came out with a proposal, there should not be any field trial, everything should be done in the greenhouse. So it took some time to convince this Supreme Court Technical Expert Committee, to convince them that field trials are part of biosafety research, field trials are part of food safety and environmental risk assessment. Now in future we are going to end up with a lot of complex products. We are all struggling with the first generation products, and we may have many other traits, healthy oils, fortified food, pharma, biofuels, feeds, industrial processes. And also we will be going to have new technologies like RNAi technology, transcription factors, lots of staked genes, etc. The whole safety science is going to, although principles remain same, there will be a lot of challenges. In future, existing methodologies are considered sufficient for safety assessment. First generation of GE crops, herbicide and insect resistance, we gave a lot of experience. Next generation of GE crops, more complex, nutritionist resistant to antibiotic stress, will be also coming with new technologies, new methodologies for safety assessment most likely, because people are already working on whether we can use proteomics and metabolomics. But the early studies with the existing commercially GM crops say that these omic studies have given no results, no extra results. Therefore, existing methodologies are considered sufficient for determining the safety assessment. And I would like to conclude saying that there are at least some academies and FAO, Codex, National Academy of Sciences, NRC, OECD. There is a huge list of people who have done a good analysis of all that exists in GM food safety literature. What they concluded is potential risks that foods derived from GE crops are not different than those of new varieties produced with conventional breeding. The principles of substantial equivalence, case-by-case analysis, and have revealed that there are no adverse effects so far. Well, one can also think of applying new technologies, but one should also examine what is safe, what is not safe. To be lighter in mind, somebody asked in one of the conferences like this, in Indian Science Congress, so he said that it's better to always check with the genomics. These technologies are very old type. Then spontaneously I tried to answer because it's a different audience. This guy was Baldy. He was from the activist group. I told him that you are Baldy, so is it okay by saying it visually? Or you have to go to trichometrician, spend 1,000 rupees to say that you are a Baldy person. So that test and this test, which you prefer? He said that, okay, but if there is a blind person, since he can't see you, then I told him that blind person will touch your head and touch 10 heads and say whether you are baldy or not. So touch test, visible test, and trichometrician. So if the touch and visible tests are more or less saying the truth, you don't have to go to omics to say the same thing. So one should be very careful in increasing the list of tests as if simply because people advise, because it will not be affordable. And then in that case, most of the public sector laboratories with a shoestring budget for their own labs to markets will have a little money to spend on regulation. So these are some resources, and kindly consult for more information. Thank you very much.